Good morning and welcome to English Learning. My name is Najmuddin and I am going to be teaching you about the simple past tense. As we can see on the screen, by the end of this session we are going to be familiar with the terms infinitive form, stem, regular verbs and irregular verbs, as well as we are going to learn how to conjugate verbs in the simple past with the pronouns. Nice. First of all, we have to know that when a verb is not conjugated, it is always preceded by the preposition to. For example, to talk, to learn, to eat, to walk. That means that the verb is in its infinitive form. And here is a simple equation for us to understand better. Infinitive form equals to plus stem. And we said that the infinitive means that the verb is not conjugated. It is preceded by the preposition to plus the verb, and we refer to the verb by stem. For example, to learn is a verb in the infinitive. To is a preposition and learn is the stem. Nice. In English, there are two categories of verbs. We have regular verbs and irregular verbs. If we want to conjugate a regular verb in the simple past, the rule is we guard the stem and we add ed. For example, to stay in the simple past is stayed. We guard the stem stay and we add ed. Play, played. Learn, learned. Pray, prayed. Open, opened. We apply the same rule. We guard the stem and we add ed to all regular verbs. Irregular verbs, however, we don't have a rule to stick to. For example, to teach, to swim, and these are irregular verbs. To teach, to swim, to drink, to feel, to write. These are, we said, irregular verbs. If we want to conjugate them in the simple past, we notice here that it changed completely. To teach became taught. We don't guard the same stem and we add ed like in the regular verbs. Irregular verbs are different. To teach became taught. To swim became swum. To drink became drank. To feel became felt. To write became wrote. And if you do not understand, we will understand hopefully better with the following examples. The group on the left is regular verbs. To talk, to walk, to learn, to clean, to stay are all regular verbs, and if we want to conjugate them, as we said earlier in the simple past, the rule says we guard the stem and we add ed. So to talk is a verb in the infinitive. If we want to conjugate it in the simple past, we guard the stem and we add ed. To talk, talked. To walk, walked. To learn, learned. To clean, cleaned. To stay, stayed. So when a verb is regular, if we want to conjugate it in the simple past, we guard the stem and we add ed. The group of verbs on the right are irregular verbs. To swim, to teach, to see, to think, to eat are irregular verbs. When we conjugate them in the simple past, as we said, we don't guard the stem and add ed. The form changes completely in the simple past. To swim becomes swum. To teach becomes taught. It changes. And there is no rule, we just have to memorize and practice so that it is easy for us to conjugate them in the simple past. By the way, we don't have to worry about the verbs being regular or irregular in the present or in the future tenses. only in the past simple. And here is an exercise for us to distinguish between regular and irregular verbs, and we have a rule to stick to decide which verbs are regular and which are irregular. The instruction says look at the conjugated verbs below, and they are conjugated in the simple past, and decide which verbs are regular and which are irregular. The list is cleaned, taught, drank, looked, felt, opened, caught, closed, wrote, called, thought, played, stayed, and saw. If we take, for example, the first verb, cleaned, the infinitive form is to clean, and we know that it is conjugated in the simple past. We notice that we guarded the stem clean and we added ed, and the rule says if we want to conjugate a verb and it is a regular verb, we guard the stem and we add ed. So the first verb cleaned is a regular verb. In the second example, however, taught, the infinitive form of the verb taught is to teach. We notice that there is no ed at the end, and we did not guard the same stem, which is teach. It is not teached, so the verb is irregular, and we have to do that with the rest of the verbs to become familiar with regular and irregular verbs. And here is another exercise for us to understand more. We will learn how to conjugate verbs in the simple past. The instruction says conjugate the verbs in the simple past, and we have examples. Yesterday Mary to clean the house. Yesterday indicates that the time is in the past. Yesterday Mary to clean the house. We say yesterday Mary cleaned the house. We cannot decide whether a verb is regular or irregular just by looking at the verb. As we said earlier, we have to memorize the verbs and practice, and we do not have to worry. That's not very hard. You just have to memorize and practice, and that's will make it easier for us to learn. Nice. Recap. We learned today about the infinitive form, and we said that it is to plus the stem. For example, to learn is in the infinitive form, it is not conjugated. To is a preposition and learn is a stem. Eat is a stem. Swim is a stem. Also, we learned that when a verb is regular, the rule is we guard the stem and we add ed to form the simple past. When the verb is irregular, there is no rule. As we said, we just have to memorize and practice. And here is a list of regular and irregular verbs for us to memorize. Regular verbs: to learn, to clean, to close, to open, to talk, to walk, to look, are all regular verbs, and they are also conjugated in the simple past. So to learn, learned, to clean, cleaned, to close, closed, and so on. The list on the right, however, is about irregular verbs: to tell, told, to speak, spoke, to see, saw, to feel, felt, to write, wrote, to put, to drink, drank. Yes, we have to also bear in mind that any verb conjugated in the simple past takes the same form with all the pronouns, whether it is regular or irregular. For example, we say I learned, you learned, he, she, it learned, and we notice that the simple past does not change. No matter what the pronoun is, it is always the same simple past form. Learned, 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 learned.